Alright, so it's been a while since we did one of these Abstracts episodes or a Photoshop tutorial, so I thought I would jump in and show you how to make an effect that I've been just simply calling Spectrum. And it was based off of this image that I put up. Let me toggle these layers back on. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll notice that I like to upload and share fonts that I create, and some are paid, but most are free. And this was the last freebie that I put up, or the latest freebie I should say. And usually when I put one of these up, I usually create some sort of presentation image or preview images so you guys can see what the typeface looks like, and maybe kind of work it into some sort of design to see how it looks. So this was the latest font I put up, and I got asked right away, how did I create the background? So let's toggle these back off so you can see just the background. This background is based off a pattern that I created on my pattern website, actually, called dinpattern.com, and I was just simply calling it Spectrum because I was trying to make kind of a sound wave type look, and I used some greens and some teal blues in there and sea greens to kind of create this. So we're going to recreate a pattern similar to this and use it as more of a background so you can see how it was created, and then maybe make something like this for your own artwork, make your own stock textures and patterns. So let's create a new document. I'm going to press Control N on the keyboard, and you want the you can make the size whatever you want, but for now I'm going to use a screen resolution size, so it's at 72 pixels per inch, or DPI or PPI for the resolution, and I think I'm going to use a 1200 by 1200 canvas just so we can build this thing. And again, you can use any size you want. Probably want to keep on the larger side to begin with, but let's go ahead and start with that. So you can either press OK on the OK button, or just enter on the keyboard, and let's open up a new document. Now let's go ahead and drag this out so we can see the whole thing here. And if I'm moving too quick, feel free to press that pause button and come back when you're all caught up. No problem there. So I'm zoomed in 100% so I can see my entire canvas here. Now what I want to do is, the first step is let's go ahead and create a new layer on top of everything so we can make a dark background real quick, throw some noise in there to give it some texture, and we'll start building from that. So the shortcut to create a new layer is Control-Shift-N, and it will load up this new layer dialog box, and you can either name it or not. You can leave it just layer 1. I'm gonna go ahead and name it gray background just so I know what's what. I'm gonna hit return or enter or press OK, and we have our new layer here. So let's go ahead, and with the color picker we'll select the background color. So let's set the background color, and I'll be calling out hex values for this session. It was a comment that was posted on one of the previous tutorials that maybe a hex value is easier to follow than the RGB value that I usually give out. So we'll try it out. So let's run with the hex value, and if you don't know what a hex value is, it's the web equivalent for a color, and it's that little text field at the bottom next to a hash sign. So for this dark gray, let's use that hex value that's already there, which is 3A, 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 and we'll use that to fill this layer with. So I'm going to press enter on my keyboard, or you can press OK to close that dialog box. And now that we have the dark gray selected and it's in the background color picker, you can simply press Control Delete for the shortcut to fill that layer with the background color. I got something in my eyeball. Okay, so now we got the background in. Let's go ahead and run a filter. We're going to run a noise filter. So filter, noise, add noise, and this is the settings that you want right here. So the amount, let's run 3%. Let's set the distribution to Gaussian and make sure monochromatic is checked on. So again, you can press OK or press enter on your keyboard, and we'll have that done. All right, so the first thing we're going to do to get this kind of grid look, and if we zoom in, you'll see that it's not actually a traditional grid. It's actually a bunch of little blocks that are kind of staggered or offset from one another. So we're going to attempt to create a pattern to hopefully streamline our process and move a little bit quicker rather than dragging out every single little box, which is probably how I did that in the first place. But we're gonna try to make that quicker. So again, let's create a new layer. Control-Shift-N, or you can always go to, if I cancel out of here, you can go to Layer, New, Layer, same dialog box, and let's call this one Bricks. I'm gonna hit return. All right. Now let's start dragging out our selection tool and create a bunch of little tiny bricks. So I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool over here, and we're going to just simply hold shift and pull down from the left to the right, and we really want a very, very tiny brick. So let's do maybe 8 by 8. So you can probably barely see that. Let me zoom in, and we're doing just a little tiny brick here. Now let's do the same fill process. Let's pick a background color again, and what we're going to do is make just a few of these bricks and get just a little pattern started, and then we'll turn it into a pattern and fill the entire layer with it. So I'm going to pick kind of a lighter gray, probably C5, C5, C5 for the hex value, and I'm going to press OK. And again, with the shortcut to fill with the background is Control Delete, and then you might want to press Control D to deselect. So let's make sure that we have our arrow cursor checked, or the move tool. I should know these by now. And if you press Control J, you'll duplicate that bricks layer. Now, while also holding Shift and using your arrow keys on your keyboard, you can just click up once, and we've moved that brick 10 pixels up. So when you hold Shift on a keyboard and cursor elements around, they move usually in 10 pixel increments. If you don't hold Shift, it'll move in 1 pixel increments. So just so you know that. So let's go ahead, and we're going to press Control E to merge those together. Let's press Control J again to duplicate that layer one more time, and hold Shift again, and let's just click down a couple of times. And then we should have 4 bricks tall, 1 brick wide column. And let's press Control E one more time, so we've now merged those together. Okay, so now we've got kind of our first column going. Let's press Control J and hold Shift and cursor over to the right one time. And now let's kind of stagger these. So I'm just going to cursor this down without holding Shift maybe 4 times. And there we go. Now Control J once more. Hold Shift and to the right again, and this time let's cursor it back up maybe 2 pixels. So now we have kind of a, you can tell they're staggered, they're not completely lined up. And one more time, Control J, cursor it over, and let's move this one maybe up a little bit higher than the original. So let's do something like that. Okay, so now the trick is, let's make this into a pattern. So I'm going to press Control E a couple of times to merge all these layers together. We just want our bricks layer all in one, all our bricks into one layer. And let's zoom in one more time. We got to find our repeatable edges here, the seams of how we're going to build this tile. So if you press Control R on your keyboard, you'll get the rulers if you don't already have those up. You see the rulers toggle on and off as I press Control R. So let's turn the rulers on so we can drag out some guides pretty easily and figure out where our pattern is going to stop and start, essentially. So let's drag one guide, and this will be the topmost part of our pattern, and I'm gonna put this guide right on the top of the second brick on the first column. All right, and kind of just get close. And then this brick will start repeating vertically at the top of the next brick, right? So I'm gonna put another guide right there. All right, and then let's see, we want our tile to start on the left of that brick. So you can see on the second brick of the first column, we've got the top left corner is basically our 0 point. So now we need to find, and we've just, since we've been looking at where this repeats vertically, you know, before we hit the next brick, we know kind of our bottom spacing, and because we staggered these in a way, we know that if you look at each column, they should start and stop at the same place vertically. That one, the third column stops right at the guide and starts again, and then the fourth one has 2 pixels above the guide, you know, vertically on both sides. So then we need to drag another guide out, and we need this to be 2 pixels over, right? Because that's our spacing. So if we drag a guide to 2 pixels past our fourth column, this should be a repeatable tile that we can grab and turn into a pattern. All right, so let's test it. Let's take our rectangular marquee tool, and we're going to make a selection within those guides we just made, and I went 1 pixel over. And then if we toggle off the visibility on our background and our gray background, we'll have just a transparent background and the bricks. So let's go ahead and go to Edit, and then we should be able to go to define pattern. Now I'm going to call this pattern bricks. You don't have to name it, but probably get into the habit of doing so and help organize your files, and press return. I'm going to press Control D and deselect that area, and let's go ahead and toggle back on the visibility of all of our layers here. So the guides are visually kind of getting in the way. So if you press Control and then semicolon, you can hide the guides briefly. And let's go ahead and create a new layer. So Shift Control in, and I'm going to call this bricks repeat. And let's go ahead and toggle off the visibility of our original bricks layer. We'll keep it there in case we screwed this step up and we need to go back and cut a new pattern. But we should just have a blank layer. Now if you go to Edit, Fill, for the contents, if you select pattern, and then under custom pattern, it should be the last one you just created. So I have a bunch of patterns in here. It's this last one here. If I select this one, now if I press OK, hopefully my pattern should tile and repeat like it's supposed to. And there we go. It's got the all the bricks are there. They're kind of staggered, but they're all, the most important part is they retain their spacing. So everything is, all these bricks are exactly 2 pixels apart from each other. Alright, so the next step we're going to do here is let's go ahead and create a layer mask for this layer. So I'm going to create a new layer mask here using the layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers palette. And let's go ahead and we're going to knock out some areas to try to give this spectrum type look here. So these peaks and valleys and kind of like a radio frequency. So let's back out one time just so we can kind of see the overall design we have here. And let's grab our brush, and we're going to use kind of a larger brush just to start with. So I'm going to set the size to about 450, and you want to set the hardness to 0. And to get the brush to come up like this, the brush palette, what I did was I simply selected the brush and just right click on the canvas, and it brings up the settings here. That's a real quick way to get into it. And I'm using Photoshop CC. I probably should have prefaced that way before, but as far as I know, bringing up the brushes like that works for many of the past versions of Photoshop. So let's just kind of go ahead and just draw in some of this and just kind of get things going here. And I'm not gonna get overall too detailed and everything just because it might take a while, but I'm going to show you, the building blocks and how to get started doing this effect. So the next thing we want to do is you'll see that some of these spaces have harder areas dropped out of them, like they're not, you can see entire columns are kind of faded out. So the way to achieve that is, now that we've kind of started this, let's zoom back in, and you want to use your rectangular marquee tool again. So let's go ahead and select that, and then you want to select a few columns of bricks, and you want to get right in between the seams basically. So when you're selecting this, make sure you're not in the middle of a brick column, but go ahead and just kind of work right in between there. So if I zoom in, we should be, there we go, we have just these 3 selected, and we're not in the middle of another brick to the left or right. So let's go ahead and we'll zoom back out, and then grab your gradient tool, and you want to set the gradient tool to linear. Make sure the foreground color is black, and we want to set the preset here from foreground to transparent. Should be the second preset on the top row. So let's click OK, and then let's go ahead and we'll drag in and mask just a few of these out, and you can kind of see how this is going to change. And what you can do is simply cursor, there's no real rhyme or reason to it, it's just kind of like where you want it. You can cursor this selection around, and we'll just kind of knock out and fade out some of these sections here. And what you can do is you can either, when you're fading these out, just it really, the variety depends on how far you drag that gradient tool. So dragging it all the way to the top, is going to give you a much longer fade, or just a real short, fade in is going to give you a shorter fade. So another thing we can do is we'll select more rows at once here to kind of vary it up. You don't want everything to be you still want some variety and everything. So let's go ahead and we'll do this some more, and we'll move this around here, something like so. And you can do this, you know, do this at your own pace. This part can be kind of tedious depending on what your overall look is. That's why I only did one kind of narrow chunk of this, and then what I do is I take the pattern and repeat it. So, but I'm just going to show you how to kind of just build this and get started. So what we'll probably actually do is crop this down just so we have we can kind of isolate what we're working on. So then again, do it to the bottom down here, and again just take out some chunks here, and again make sure you're not in the middle of a column because that kind of tears a design up a little bit, in my opinion. It doesn't make it as clean. So let's just keep going, and you can go over and overlap columns. That still works too. Maybe do something like this, and you can kind of see this effect starting to take place. And we'll do kind of a longer fade there, and we'll come back and do maybe shorter fade, maybe a little more, and you can kind of see what's happening here. Again, work at your own pace. It's one of those things. This is where you kind of just have fun. You just kind of eyeball it and see, you know, what parts should be kind of faded, what shouldn't. You know, where you want to get a little more variety in the overall design. Let's see. So we'll do something like that for now. Let's grab a big chunk down here just so we're at least a little bit balanced. All right. So we'll just focus on this midsection for now. So there you go. That's how you start getting that kind of pulled apart look in the spectrum here. So let's go ahead, and I'm gonna take this and let's go ahead and add some color to it. We'll actually strike that. Let's set the background columns first. So if you select the thumbnail on your layer here and press Ctrl J, let's make a duplicate copy of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the mask, and we're just going to disable that layer mask. So now we're back to our just our bricks layer. What you want to do is grab that layer and drag it right above your gray background. What we're going to do is going to give this kind of a dark column a look in the background to help pull that spectrum effect up off and give it some depth a little bit. So we're going to give this a color overlay for the layer style. So select color overlay, and we're going to set that to black, just like that. Press OK. Now let's go to filter, blur, and we're going to give this a motion blur. And you want this at a 90-degree angle. And the distance can be around 200 pixels, actually, unless you're selecting, what is it, 1 pixel. Anything over like 4, you're going to get kind of a column, you know, just a black column look anyway. So I'm going to set this to 100 pixels for now. I'm going to press OK. Now we don't want this to be, the contrast to be super high like we have now. So this whole layer, let's set the opacity down to maybe 50%. Let's go even lower. Let's go 35%. And we just want to give kind of that striped look essentially to the whole thing. All right, so now we're gonna essentially do that process one more time. But what we're gonna do is we're going to duplicate our bricks layer again. So the topmost layer with the mask on, duplicate it and drag that layer again to right above your not above the gray, but right above your darker background that you just made. All right, so this time let's go ahead and we're gonna set the color overlay to the layer style to black again. So we'll set the color overlay to black. All right. Now for this one, let's also give this a motion blur. So we're going to go to filter, blur, motion blur, and on a 90-degree angle as well. And we'll probably set this to, I don't know, let's do 300, maybe 450, 400. Let's do 400 and hit OK. Now you can see how we're starting to create that little bit of darker shadow that comes off the edges almost of the spectrum effect. So Let's do that. And then one last minor thing is actually select the mask itself on that layer, and let's go to filter, blur, and we'll motion blur that as well, but not as much. So let's look at what we got here, and we're going to kind of drag it down. So let's set that around 350, and it's just a slight little detail that's going to help pick it up a little bit. And there you go. So if you look at this middle section, this is our spectrum effect that we have going, and it's starting to get there. The next thing we want to do is let's go ahead and add some color into it and see what that'll look like, and then we'll add the resolution lines to kind of finish it off. So above all these layers, let's create a new layer, and again, that's Shift Control N if you want to use a shortcut. And I'm going to call this layer Green Fade. And if we want to turn this into a pattern, we want an equal fade on the top and the bottom. So let's select our foreground color, and the hex value for this green that I was using was 209A6B. Should be the green. So let's press enter, and we'll go ahead and load that up. And before I get into that though, our original bricks layer, let's select that and let's turn the opacity down just a hair. We'll turn it to 65. There we go. Kind of give it a turn the overall contrast down a little bit. So this topmost fade, let's select our gradient tool, and again we want linear selected, and we want foreground to transparent, and let's start at the top. So the top side, let's drag the gradient down to about almost the mid, right in the middle of the image, and let's do the same from the bottom. So from the bottom up, let's do the same thing. And if you notice, I'm moving the image around. A quick way to do that is to hold the space bar, and it switches over to your hand cursor, and you can just grab the image and move it up and down, and it's quicker and easier to get across your canvas with that. So with this layer, let's set the blending mode to overlay, and we'll turn the opacity down on this to about 65. So we get kind of a subtle green in there for now. So let's create a new layer again, Control Shift N, a new layer. Let's call this one the blue fade, and let's pick our foreground color, and the color I had for this one, so I wrote it down, is 0180CF, and hit return. Now we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do a gradient, but we're gonna go past the midway point and kind of more towards the top. So go from the bottom, hold Shift, and let's go up, right past the midpoint and get something like that, so we get this area. So let's go ahead and change that blend mode to overlay as well, and we'll turn the opacity down there to about 65% as well. So we get that nice sea green going on, and working that in. So the last little effect that I had that helped give this some more texture was kind of a fake screen resolution lines from older monitors used to do this. So let's create a new layer, Control Shift N. We're going to name this Res Lines. Now for this one, it's easier to create a pattern. So let's press Control N and open a new document. This pattern is going to be probably one of the smallest patterns that you can make. So the width is 1, and the height is 2, and the resolution is 72 dpi. So I'm press enter, and I'm going to drag this out so we can see, zoom in as much as I can. That's about as far as I can go. Select your rectangular marquee tool, Control Shift N for a new layer. We're going to call this the line, and let's just select the topmost pixel. All right, so the background color, let's set back to that original green color, which was 209A6B, and get back to there. Now that we have this set as our background color on our color picker, again, we can just press Control Delete to fill that in. So now we basically have a 2-pixel column, and the top is green, and the bottom, we're going to toggle off the visibility and make that transparent. So Control A to select all, edit, define pattern, and we'll call this Res Line. All right, let's go back to our original document and that new layer we just made. Let's go to edit, and we'll go to fill, and we're going to fill this with a pattern again. So again, the pattern should be the last one on your list, and let's press OK, and we'll fill this with these res lines. Now the last little kind of detail here to set this off is to set the color blend mode to overlay as well for this one, and you can see that gets us pretty close. It's a bit brighter than the original, but that's essentially how this is created. You can do some more effects like duplicating, especially in the background layers, this darker layer that we got going on. Maybe taking the layer right above it and press Ctrl J and duplicate that, and we'll make that darker, give a little more contrast. You can come in and vary up more of these lines that we masked out before. The other cool thing to do is to create a mask on the top as well and kind of play around with that, just so I can show you what that looks like real quick. If I go to my original bricks layer and let's select our brush tool, and we'll take a chunk out of the top here and see how that looks. Hide my guides and just do something like that. Let's actually back out more so I can paint kind of off screen. Use a bigger brush because we just want a subtle. You can kind of make something like this because we're just painting on the mask here, so that'll kind of vary it up as well. And then our original pattern process that we did, you can use the same thing for here. So when you you know, when you get edges that look like that they can repeat pretty well, or that you like them, you can just take a selection and turn this into a pattern. Before you turn it into a pattern though, I would go up to the blue fade layer and let's create a layer mask. And you want to remember that the top and the bottom are going to repeat as well, so we want that green to repeat. So you could actually fade out the bottom of the blue, and that'll give you a nice transition to the green again. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. Just so I show you the original spectrum one. If I press Control A, I can turn this whole thing into a pattern. So define pattern, and I'll call it spectrum. All right, and then Control N will open a new document, and the width I will set it at 1280 and the height at 720, a regular thumbnail size, and just go to Edit, Fill with the original spectrum one I had, and you can see that it does stuff like this. And then again, you can take that even further and push it to be something more like this by using some other filters. But that's about as far as we're going to get on this one. This has just been how to get this going, and then if you do create something like this, I want you to push it further and see what it turns into, and then send me previews on Twitter or Facebook, because I love to see what you guys come up with and how these turn out. Now this is just a very subtle pattern and kind of texture, but it can go a long way, and by changing up the colors and shapes and just the overall process that we use, you can get some really cool stuff out of it. So I'll leave you with that. I will be back with another abstracts here soon, and if you have something that you want me to cover or trying to figure out how to do an effect, please send it to me on Twitter and or post a comment below, and I will try and look into it, see how I figure it out for you. All right, so that's about it, and I will talk to you until next time. Later.